I never imagined that a routine vacation would turn into the most frightening phone call I'd ever receive. I was thousands of miles from home, relaxed for the first time in years, when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. What I heard next made my stomach drop instantly. "Sir, I'm a locksmith, and someone here says your house now belongs to her." That was the exact moment I understood my HOA. Karen wasn't just irritating anymore. She was dangerous. I live in a quiet, spotless neighborhood where everyone smiles politely while secretly monitoring everyone else. The HOA controls everything: lawns, paint shades, trash placement. And right at the center of it all was her, the kind of woman who stands a little too close, speaks a little too loud, and smiles in a way that feels less like kindness and more like a threat. From day one, she made it obvious she didn't like me. She said my fence color was 2 inches too dark. She complained that my car looked too old for the community's image. Once, she knocked on my door at 7 in the morning just to inform me that my porch light was emotionally disruptive. I ignored her. That turned out to be my biggest mistake. Before leaving for my trip, I did everything by the book. I notified the HOA, paused my deliveries, and asked a neighbor to keep an eye on the house. Nothing unusual. No warnings. No emails. Just silence. The first 3 days of my vacation were perfect. Then that call came. The locksmith sounded uneasy, almost apologetic. He explained that a woman claiming to represent the HOA had hired him to change my locks. She told him I'd violated community rules, that the property was being secured, and that she had full authorization. When he asked for proof, she produced HOA paperwork and spoke with such confidence that he nearly believed her, until he noticed something wasn't right. My name was still on the mailbox. The utilities were still on. And worst of all, she kept rushing him. My hand started shaking as I told him, "Do not touch my locks. That woman does not own my house." There was a pause. Then he said quietly, "Sir, she's standing right here, and she's getting angry." He kept me on the line, and I could hear her voice in the background, sharp, commanding. She kept saying things like, "Just do your job," and "He knows what he did." She claimed I'd abandoned the property, that I was non-compliant, that the HOA had the authority to act immediately. Every word made my blood boil. I wasn't even there to defend myself, and she knew it. Then the locksmith did something that changed everything. He stepped away, lowered his voice, and said, "I'm calling the police. Something isn't right." That's when Karen completely lost it. She started shouting that he was wasting time, that she'd report his license, that she ran this neighborhood. I could hear doors opening, neighbors peeking outside. A scene was unfolding in front of my own house, while I listened helplessly from another country. Then my phone buzzed again, another incoming call. This time it was the police, and that's when it fully hit me. This wasn't HOA overreach anymore. This was a crime in progress. The officer's voice was calm, but his words landed hard. He told me they were on site and needed to confirm one thing immediately. Had I authorized anyone from the HOA to access, secure, or modify my property in any way? I said no, not verbally, not in writing, not ever. There was a brief silence. Then he said, "All right, sir, please stay on the line." Later, he described what was happening in real time. Karen was pacing my driveway, arms crossed, chin raised, acting like she owned the place. When the officers approached, she didn't panic. She didn't hesitate. She smiled. She introduced herself as though this were a scheduled meeting, not a police response. She claimed she was protecting community interests. She insisted my home had been abandoned and that HOA bylaws allowed her to secure it. She even said she was doing me a favor. The officers asked for documentation. That's when her confidence cracked. Just slightly, she handed over a stack of papers, pointing rapidly, talking over them, trying to control the situation. The locksmith stood off to the side now, arms folded, clearly uncomfortable. Neighbors had gathered, pretending to check their mail, pretending not to stare. Karen noticed. She always noticed an audience. The officers didn't rush. They asked precise questions. When did the HOA declare the property abandoned? Where was the notice? Why were the utilities still active? Why was the homeowner reachable by phone right now? With each question, her voice grew sharper, louder. She stopped answering directly and started deflecting. She accused the officers of not understanding HOA authority. She accused the locksmith of incompetence. She accused me through the phone of being irresponsible and unreachable, even though I was literally speaking to them. Then came the question that changed everything. One officer asked calmly, "Ma'am, do you have written consent from the homeowner to change the locks?" She hesitated just a fraction of a second too long. Then she said, "Consent isn't required in emergency situations." That was when the locksmith stepped forward. He told the officer she had pressured him to rush, that she refused to provide a deed, and that she became hostile the moment he asked to verify ownership. He said something felt wrong the instant she talked about changing locks without notifying the homeowner. His voice wasn't angry. It was calm, professional, and absolutely damning. Karen spun toward him instantly. She threatened to have him blacklisted. She told the officers he was lying. She insisted everyone knew she had final authority. Her face was flushed now, the calm mask completely gone. The neighbors weren't pretending anymore. Phones were out, pointed openly. One officer turned away from her and spoke directly to me through the phone. He asked if I could confirm my identity and provide proof of ownership digitally. I sent everything within minutes. My deed, my ID, past HOA correspondence. While they reviewed it, Karen kept talking. She couldn't stop herself. She began listing every complaint she'd ever filed against me. The fence, the car, the porch light. She said this had been building for months. That's when the officer looked up and said something that made my stomach sink. "Ma'am, this is no longer an HOA matter." Karen laughed, a sharp, shallow laugh, like she thought it was a bluff. It wasn't. The officers explained slowly and clearly that attempting to change locks without homeowner consent could constitute criminal trespass and fraud, that misrepresenting authority to gain access to private property was a serious offense, and that pressuring a contractor under false pretenses was now documented. Her smile vanished. She tried to interrupt. The officer raised his hand. For the first time since I'd known her, someone told Karen to be quiet. She stepped back, then back again. Her voice dropped, suddenly softer. She said there must be a misunderstanding. She said she was only following procedure. She said the HOA would clear this up, but it was too late. The officers had everything. The locksmith had everything. The neighbors had seen everything. Then the officer asked her to turn around. Listening through the phone, knowing I wasn't there to see it, I felt something shift, not relief, not victory. Because as they reached for her wrists, Karen said one last thing that made it clear this had never been about rules or lawns or authority at all. It was personal. She didn't scream when they cuffed her. She didn't cry. She leaned toward one of the officers and said calmly, "You don't understand. That house was supposed to be mine." That sentence hit harder than anything else that day. The officer froze and asked her to repeat herself. She didn't hesitate. She said she'd been watching my house for years. Said she knew when I left, when I returned, when my light stayed on too long or went off too early. She said she knew I lived alone most of the time, that I traveled often, that I didn't participate in the community like others did. In her mind, that made my home wasted space. Then she said the quiet part out loud. She had submitted an HOA board expansion proposal months earlier, one that would allow the HOA to reclaim abandoned or non-compliant homes under extreme circumstances. The proposal failed. Everyone voted against it except her. She never let it go. When she saw my vacation notice, something clicked. She convinced herself this was her opportunity to prove those rules should exist. If she could take control of my house, even briefly, she believed she could justify everything later. She didn't think I'd answer the phone. She didn't think the locksmith would question her. And she absolutely didn't think the police would arrive before the locks were changed. The officer told her intent mattered, and she had just admitted hers. The tone shifted completely. What she believed was HOA power was now evidence. She was read her rights while the neighbors stood in silence. No whispers, no phones, just shock. The locksmith handed over his written statement. The officers thanked him. One of them told him he likely saved me months of legal chaos. I thanked him too, my voice breaking over the phone. I hadn't expected that part, The emotion, the realization of how close I'd come to losing control of my own home while I was gone. Karen was placed in the back of the patrol car. As the door closed, she finally lost her composure. She shouted that the neighborhood would fall apart without her, that everyone would regret this. No one replied. When I returned from vacation days later, my house was untouched, exactly as I'd left it. But the neighborhood felt different, quieter, smaller. The HOA issued a formal apology. Karen was removed permanently. The charges stuck. The board was dissolved and reformed under outside oversight. As for me, I installed cameras and changed nothing else. I didn't need to, because the most frightening part wasn't that someone tried to take my house. It was realizing how easily she believed she could, and how close she came to succeeding. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Every subscription helps me bring you even more intense and dramatic HOA stories. Don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss an upload. I'll see you in the next story, where justice gets even more satisfying.